Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us here today. My name is Jared Neppa. I'm the Vice President and National Sales Manager for Lincoln Annuities, and we could not be happier for what we have in store to share with you what we have in store for you this afternoon. So before I get started and bring on our featured speaker, I'd be remiss without saying thank you to all of the wonderful support that we've seen in our partnership with our financial advisors in the year of 2020. I could say that 2020 was certainly a year filled with challenges, but as we step back and look at those challenges, what you'll find hidden within them were certainly a number of opportunities. If you think about the way that we've had to do business, we've gone from a model that was virtually 100% in person to now almost 100% virtual. 2020 has forced everybody to embrace change more quickly than they normally would have in the past. And frankly, it's allowed us to identify opportunities to increase our operational efficiency, whether it's Lincoln running a distribution organization or in the way that you are running your financial practice and the way you choose to serve clients. So as we start out 2021, Lincoln wants to continue to give you the tools to improve client outcomes. We run our business based on a 3-trimester system, and our first trimester couldn't be more aptly named. And we're calling it here in the first trimester, Own the Outcome. If you're interested in finding out any of this information that I'll discuss briefly here, you can go to www.lfg.com, LFG, LincolnFinancialGroup.com/Own the Outcome. And what you'll find is a list, a chock full list of resources, everything from taking control of client conversations, highlighting words you should use and words you should kind of get rid of, where people may have some fatigue. So giving you some tips and tricks there. Also helping you keep the conversation going. And again, our featured speaker is going to talk about this. In order to keep a conversation going, it's not always about you talking more. It's really about you active listening more. And some other things you'll find on here is the fact that Lincoln is committed to providing you and your clients investment strategies that empower you to take decisive action. So those are some resources we're excited to share with you into 2021 to help you start your year strong. But today we have a special guest speaker that clearly understands how to turn challenging situations and circumstances into rich opportunities. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian Walsh. As a 17-year-old volunteer firefighter, Brian Walsh has so much to look forward to. Then in an instant, caught in a burning building where everything went wrong, he found himself clinging to life. His face burned beyond recognition. Even loved ones encouraged him to pursue a career in life that would keep him largely hidden, but Brian chose another route. At 19, from behind the mask he wore for 2 years, he met the love of his life. At 22, he became an insurance agent in one of the most face-to-face jobs you could possibly imagine. And then at 26, he co-founded Walsh and Nicholson Financial Group, which today serves over 1,000 clients in wealth management, estate and retirement planning, and more. He holds a chartered financial consultant, a chartered life underwriter, and is a certified financial fiduciary. Brian's held many leadership roles in the financial services industry and currently serves as the president of the $1 Million Roundtable Foundation Board and is deeply involved in charitable pursuits, including finding a cure for juvenile diabetes and supporting firefighters. Brian lives in Haverford, Pennsylvania with his wife, Mary Ann. They have 3 children and 2 beautiful grandchildren. Without further ado, it is my absolute pleasure to present to you our motivational speaker to help you start your year in 2021 off strong, Brian Walsh.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be kicking off the new year with all of you. The folks at Lincoln Financial asked me to help you get fired up and motivated for the year ahead. I can guarantee my story will literally involve some flames and some motivation. So let's get started. If you had met me at 17 years old, you never would have thought Brian is going to grow up to be a high-achieving financial professional, an author, an in-demand speaker, husband to a wonderful wife of 35 years, father to 3 successful children, and a grandfather to 2 beautiful granddaughters, and leading a challenging but incredibly happy life. While I looked like your average kid, on the surface, what wasn't so average is that I was also a volunteer firefighter. Firefighting became a passion of mine. It made up for how I felt about school with undiagnosed dyslexia. I suffered the humiliation of having to go to the remedial trailer for the kids that needed extra help. While school created angst for me, firefighting fueled my esteem. It was exhilarating. I was respected for my work ethic and I was good at it. It fed my interest in helping people and contributing to a larger cause. It helped me reclaim my confidence, and it provided me an opportunity to prove I was better than average. After 18 months, I had fought more than 300 fires. To have gone that long without an injury, I felt incredibly lucky. I'm sure you remember a feeling of invincibility when you were younger. I always felt that luck was on my side until it wasn't. The early morning hours of October 24th, 1981 changed my life. It was 1:30 a.m. when my pager went off. I jumped out of bed, put my bunker pants on, and arrived at the firehouse. 5 minutes later, I was on the back of the engine on my way to the fire scene. I wasn't expecting to go into the building, so I didn't have my breathing apparatus on. Since the captain was under the impression that the fire was manageable and under control, he instructed me to take a hose up the stairwell to the other firefighters on the 3rd floor. So I found myself taking up the hose, and when I got there, came across approximately 8 to 10 other firefighters. At the same time, a fellow firefighter, Johnny Glasson, was on the 2nd floor discovering some very bad news about the floor we were standing on. As Glasson and another firefighter used what's called an X-hook to pull down sections of the ceiling, they discovered flames burning above them, which meant we were standing on a floor of flames. Before Johnny and the other firefighter could reach the stairwell to alert us, everything went black. It's called a flashover. If you've ever seen the movie Backdraft, a flashover and a backdraft have exactly the same result, but different sciences at play. Both generate a quick and powerful result that aren't very common. What precedes both is a moment of total darkness. Johnny would later tell me in all his years of fighting fires, he had only seen 2 other flashovers. In a flashover, there's a very brief moment where there's not enough oxygen to support combustion. In that moment, blackness consumes the space and gases and superheated air gather and they wait for oxygen. Finally, the fire discovers a stairwell or a broken window, which gives it oxygen and needs to erupt into a much larger all-consuming fire. The fire that followed the flashover sounded like a freight train as it gathered speed and moved down the hallway. It spread into every space, reaching 800 to 1,000 degrees. I couldn't see a thing. I was beyond choking. I had begun to burn. I fell to my knees and crawled my way along a fire hose toward an exit. As I was crawling along, the walls and ceiling were engulfed in flames. I found the stairwell door and I pushed it open, and I let out a blood-curdling scream when the fresh air hit my face and I passed out. The next thing I remember was waking up in the ambulance. If you think a 3rd-degree burn all over your face and internal burning of your lungs sounds really painful, I can tell you that the healing process was much more excruciating. St. Agnes Burn Center in South Philadelphia would be my home for the immediate future. When I arrived, I had already been intubated because my esophagus and lungs had been burned, and my eyes were swollen shut because my head had swollen to basketball-sized proportions. When I arrived at the burn center, I was initiated to the tub room. A scrub brush like this one was used to clean my open wounds. This agonizing cleansing of my wounds would continue twice a day, every day, for my entire stay. They scrubbed every micro-inch of where I'd been burned. Anytime they reached a place where nerve endings were exposed and where I could feel the tiniest surfaced area that was teased or pulverized, I prayed I would pass out from the pain. The reason for this daily torment, and it was torture, was to prevent infection. Infections are the #1 enemy for every burn patient. Unfortunately, 4 weeks into my hospitalization, a horrible infection ran through the burn center. All 12 of us in the center had succumbed to this infection. 11 died from it. Yes, you heard that correctly. 11 died. I was the only survivor. I was incredibly lucky to have fought it off. It's not uncommon for family members of patients to become friendly as they share a common bond, praying that their loved ones will stay alive. Unfortunately, my parents would spend the next week going to funerals for their friends' loved ones after the infection ravaged the burn center. Surviving and recovering from a fire takes time. We could spend an hour just talking about the healing process. But today, we will focus on 3 powerful life lessons that I learned to help get you from survive to thrive. These lessons helped me build a successful practice, and I'm confident they can help you thrive this year and beyond. I've called each one a rule of resilience. Resilience is a life skill and leadership quality that everyone should cultivate. The 3 rules of resilience are to resolve to change, reclaim your voice, and recharge relationships. The first rule of resilience I learned on my journey is to resolve to change. When you've had a harrowing experience like mine, your first reaction is often fear. It's human nature, fight or flight. Much of my fear materialized in a hospital bed, so flight was not an option. I had to embrace my fear and the long healing process ahead of me if I was ever going to walk out of the St. Agnes Burn Center. Finding my resolve was not an overnight task. You don't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm ready to move on from this setback and be done with it. Doesn't work that way. Everyone's journey is on a different timeline. My reentry took years and many surgeries. Let's talk about when I left the burn center at St. Agnes. The best place to start would be with my mask. When your face is healing after an event like mine, you wear a tight mask, and we're all familiar with the idea of wearing masks these days, but mine was nothing like the wimpy mask we wear for COVID. It's called a compression mask or a Jopes mask. It was skin tone and a couple sizes smaller than my head, so it put pressure on my scars to prevent them from getting thicker and harder. I was in this mask for the next 2 years, and I wore it 23 hours a day, only to take it off to bathe and to eat. In February of my senior year of high school, I went back to school with this mask. The general response was sympathetic, and most classmates treated me with a business as usual attitude, which I was very grateful for. Unfortunately, there's always someone who couldn't handle the change. They either acted awkwardly toward me or they looked in the other direction. They let this mask get in the way of interacting with me. Even some teachers had a tough time with it and would look the other way as we passed in the hall. It's hard to overcome a mask when you're trying to connect with people. I'm sure you can relate now that you're wearing your COVID masks. It's hard to talk, be heard, or show expressions. I experienced the same thing with my mask, except I was the only one wearing it. And no one had ever seen this kind of mask before. So the effect it had on others and me was compounded dramatically. COVID or no COVID, everyone has a mask, metaphorically speaking. A mask is simply something physical or emotional that presents a barrier to connecting with others, connecting with who we really are and our own reality. If you're wearing a mask of your own, your interactions with your colleagues and your clients will feel like you're not making that connection. They're not fulfilling. They feel fake. These unsatisfying interactions prevent you from reaching your potential. Plus, it's really frustrating when you look back at your goals versus your actuals and they're really not where you want them to be. We are in the people business. If you want to make 2021 an amazing year of client growth, you have to resolve to improve how you relate with everyone around you. Only the best relationships will yield the best results. The best way to overcome your setback or meet a particular goal is to break down your path to success with incremental actions. Together, these smaller actions represent a resilient approach. I got from the hospital bed to where I am today by taking it one day at a time, one moment at a time. And that strategy worked out well for me in my career. What can you do to break down your success? How many more calls may you make by the week or by the day? How can you further break it down? Think about what you're saying or doing. Resilient leaders know how to build trusting relationships by accumulating moments of trustworthy behavior over time. Asking yourself which rapport building questions and behavior actually work and which ones need to be scrapped or updated. If you already have some good client relationships that you're proud of, what about those interactions makes them work? Are there things you do that are repeatable with others? How do you make sure your service stands out above everyone else's? It goes without saying that your clients can benefit from Resolve in the new year as well. Help them reach their financial goals by breaking it down for them into terms that are meaningful to them. Another strategy for committing to your Resolve is to share your intentions with others, to make them real. Resilient people are willing to take calculated risk and try new ideas. It's easy to get stuck in a rut and continue to work the same way day in and day out. It works until the world changes. A verbal declaration backed by a goal that's important to you always shifts your thinking about how serious you are. Do you have a colleague you admire or a friend you respect who you can share your audacious goal with? Better yet, where at work can you make it known? My first real career choice after the accident was a great opportunity to test my early signs of resilience. I had a job offer at Mutual of Omaha to work in a highly interactive sales position. My family was very leery of me taking this on. They preferred that I consider another job opportunity with FEMA that was less interactive with other people. After a lot of soul searching and thinking about my future, I decided that my face told a story that was more uplifting than depressing. Because here I was in front of potential clients doing something productive, aspiring to something greater, and trying to turn a dream into a reality, not hiding. As I dug deeper into why I wanted to pursue a very interactive and challenging career, I started to have incredible clarity. My why was that I genuinely wanted to help people, just like I had it as a volunteer firefighter. I wanted to prepare them for the important times in their life, retirement, their children's education, and unforeseeable events like a premature death or a disability. Since I knew my why, it came through in how I connected with clients. They could more easily identify with me on a personal level. If clients can feel your why come through in your interactions, they are more willing to stand with you through thick and thin, the great times and the COVID times. Answering your why means getting to the root of your individual values and beliefs, which requires really looking in the mirror and knowing why helps you channel your resilience. When's the last time you really looked in the mirror and asked yourself why you're doing what you do? This is the ultimate test of resolve. The second rule of resilience is to reclaim your voice. When you have experienced a major setback, more than your fair share of rejection, or a life-changing event, it can be disorienting. Our tendency is to pull inward. If you've somehow lost your way or been distracted by all the events of 2020, the process of reclaiming your voice, direction, and how you'll adapt should be your number one priority. When I made this choice to pursue a highly interactive career instead of taking a safe route with little public interaction, that was a pivotal moment for me. I chose a career we're all in with face-to-face interaction instead of a job where I'd be much more reclusive. When I verbalized what I saw in myself, I could trust my feelings. I could reconnect with doing something that was public-facing. It helped me reclaim my path, and it led to my eventual success as a business owner. Resilient leaders embrace change and encourage others around them to get on board. When I made this career move, it was easier for my family and friends to support me because they knew my why. It's no different in our industry as financial professionals. We're constantly in a position of advising our clients to make thoughtful changes to optimize their outcome. We have to stay informed about the best financial tools like the ones Lincoln Financial provides, so our clients feel comfortable with the changes we recommend. We need to apply that same comfort level we have with recommending financial advice to our own lives. It takes courage and requires a vision to embrace the change we've experienced over the last year. The same applies to your clients. Encourage them to adapt and be champions of necessary change so they can protect their path to financial success. Another strategy that's helpful when reclaiming your voice is to change the conversation. What we say about ourselves, our jobs, and others becomes a mantra. We do what our mind focuses on. Changing the conversations means reframing how you evaluate your current situation and past events. Sometimes the most trying events can produce the biggest learning moments. Try to look setbacks with a positive lens. What can be learned? As financial professionals, we can experience doubts now and then because being decisive can be difficult because no person has all the data or understands all the eventualities. It's a natural part of our business. The most resilient leaders understand that if they make wrong decisions, they can be swift about corrective measure. Change the conversation from self-doubt to resolute action. The third rule of resilience is to recharge your relationships. Your capacity for coping with stress on the job and conquering obstacles at work is greatly impacted by the social bonds you have. Best-selling author and global consultant Sean Akur is one of the world's leading experts on the connection between happiness and success. He says rather than turn inward when under stress, the most successful people take the exact opposite approach. They actually hold tighter to their social bonds and invest rather than divest and hole up somewhere. They know that their social relationships are the single greatest investment they can make. In fact, a 75-year-old study at Harvard found that the single most important factor in happiness was social bonds. Author Stephen J. Daniels has a lighter view of the importance of close social connections. He says, "A good friend will help you move, but a true friend will help you move a body." My friends, Sonny and Tina, along with my wife, Mary Ann, we have a different name for the truest of friends. The kind you can call at 3 a.m. and they don't judge. They just show up and drop everything to be with you. They are your foxhole friends. Who are your foxhole friends? And more importantly, who are you a foxhole friend for? This is a strategy I know Lincoln Financial firmly believes in. In fact, they take great pride in making sure you find a friend when you contact Lincoln Financial about their services. Jim Noonan was a foxhole friend for me when I was in the hospital. He was one of the burn technician nurses who cared for me. He was literally saved my life twice while I was recovering in a burn unit. He typically treated me with sarcasm, which made me feel right at home. Plus, I hated the hospital food, so once in a while he fed my cravings with covert McDonald's deliveries. Even after I was discharged, Jim took me under his wing and tried to help me get acclimated to life with third-degree facial burns and wearing a compression mask. Jim would continue to be a foxhole friend to this day, and he's actually the godfather to my oldest child. In the spirit of Jim Noonan, are you reaching out to others and they to you? How do you show others empathy in the workplace? How do you show dependability and camaraderie? Do you communicate with the whole person when you speak with someone? Having foxhole friends and being that person for someone else is absolutely critical for those moments in life when you need to find resilience with the help of others, and you will need their help. After the fire, I had to find a way to be in this world because you don't always have your foxhole. You can't always travel in groups. I had to devise a way to anticipate the long looks, a way to handle or diffuse an insensitive or ignorant comment, a way to turn something that could be awkward and hard to get past into a non-issue or even something positive, a way to win over wary strangers. My solution? Always throw the first punch. I try to disarm people with humor and honesty. Was this something I learned because of my accident? I don't know. I was a wisecracking teenager, as Sister St. Angela would have absolutely confirmed. Regardless of where the impulse was born, I needed to be funny, even outrageous, to address the total unfunniness of my situation. You all have been in a situation when you needed to diffuse a potentially awkward moment. By throwing the first punch, you can disarm others around you and define the exchange rather than let it evolve out there and be on its own and hope for the best. Throwing the first punch means tapping into your EQ and showing self-awareness of a situation. Using humor or calling a situation like you see it demystifies a moment. Everyone's got something about which they're self-conscious. If it makes you feel insecure, would a lighthearted comment about it help? Would it help you? By giving expression to what you feel, others may feel but don't want to say, the ability to take control of what feels like a disadvantage and to neutralize it, that can be very liberating. A study by HR consultants Bravely Inc. says 70% of employees are avoiding uncomfortable conversations with their bosses, colleagues, or direct reports. 70%. What could throwing the first punch be in your life? What is a way of taking a risk and reaching out to a client or a colleague? How might you make someone feel more at ease in a difficult situation? There are countless uncomfortable situations in life and in work waiting for you to take that first punch. We try to put others at ease because life can be hard and people often do things that make you scratch your head. But thankfully, more often than you might suspect, life throws you a bone and something becomes very clear. When I met a 70-year-old man named Claude 4 years ago, I had one of those tremendous moments of clarity. I realized that another way of focusing on my relationships besides forming foxhole friends and throwing the first punch could be as simple as asking a question and then shutting up. Claude became a quadriplegic 4 years earlier when his car was rear-ended by a tractor trailer. And now he was in a position where he was searching someone to manage his finances. He had met with a number of financial professionals before me, just looking for the right fit. I'm sure they all told him about their expected annualized returns. When I met with him after we exchanged hellos and pleasantries, I asked him one question. What do you want to have happen here? His response was amazing. He said, "You're the first person to ask me that." We discussed his goals and his dreams. He wanted to buy a home for his kids and make sure his grandkids had enough money for all their education that they would ever desire. It's possible that Claude recognized me, a comrade, someone who had also suffered a great physical damage firsthand and carried it around with him every day. Maybe he thought I had a more highly developed understanding of what life was like and how it feels to have it monumentally and forever changed in an instant. And yet, I honestly don't think that's what it was. Had one of the other financial professionals that Claude met before me, some conventional looking man or woman with no obviously physical handicap, really listened to Claude, he may have won the account. I've come to see that I can approach almost anyone and find common ground, so long as I really listen and I'm really present. All people want to do is connect, bottom line. So, if you've been listening closely, then you know that being someone's foxhole friend, throwing the first punch, and asking a question so you can truly listen are actually paving the way for you to connect with people more easily. You make them feel as they matter because they do. Resilience isn't just about your ability to overcome setbacks, make life decisions, and see them through. It's about having the mental capacity to show up for people in an engaging way and be present for someone. One of the most important ways you can hear others is by learning the names of their spouses and partner, their children, or even their dog. If you're not naturally a good listener, and you may not be, you surely have other talents, then at least try to teach yourself to remember names. It goes a long way to convincing people that they matter. How does all this help you thrive in 2021? We each have our own life stories that bring us together after an exceptionally challenging 2020. Just as I left the burn center and stepped into a new reality, we find ourselves in a new year with a new business reality. And I challenge you to find your resolve and make this your best year ever. Reclaim the passion you had when you first discovered this industry that we all love. Take an hour each day to recharge your relationships with clients and friends, and just ask them how they're doing. Ask how their loved ones are. The best way to provide for our clients is to serve them. The more you connect with them, the better results you'll have. If they come to you for guidance, don't celebrate a sale. Celebrate a new relationship. Go thrive in 2021, and thank you.
Brian, just absolutely fantastic. What a message. The things you were able to share with us, not only can we all control and take advantage of, but they're simple, they're realistic, and they're action items that we could hold ourselves accountable to. So with that, I wanted to see if it was okay with you. We had a few questions rolling in as you were presenting. And would you be okay to take a few of those questions here?
Yeah, absolutely, Jared. And again, thank you for having me.
Great. So let me get off to the first one here. So Brian, you mentioned this idea of resolve to change. Do you have a daily process, a system, a hack, or something like that you use or you follow to keep this mindset front and center?
Yeah, Jared, it's a great question. One of the things I always challenge myself to do and the people around me is to look at the things we're doing daily, day in and day out, whether it's personally or professionally, and what can be better. How do we make it better? How do we have a better outcome? Are there things that we're doing now that can be improved upon for the ultimate betterment of, if it's personal, your family, or professionally for our clients? A couple examples might be, from a personal level, if you have a goal of working out or losing weight or whatever, and looking at everything you're doing daily to attain those goals is very, very important. It's easy to skip a workout and you'll end up not getting the result that you want. And what you really have to do is break it down and find out why that goal hasn't been met or isn't being met. And a lot of times you'll come back to the fact that you weren't fully committed, and breaking it down to small pieces and achieving every little small piece to add up to a good result. From a professional standpoint, we're always looking at, what are we doing in the office? What are we doing for our clients that's going to make their lives and their outcomes better? Are we constantly trying to get to the best product? Are we continuing our education to make sure we have all the latest data and information that we need to help our clients? It could be as simple as making sure we have the right technologies in place. I'll go back to 2000, and I made a huge investment in going paperless when very few people went paperless at that time. But staying on the forefront of technology was, in this day and age, a godsend for us, because we were able to fairly easily transition into this virtual world that we live in now, because we're already using and we're familiar with a lot of these tools that we're using. So from that aspect, it's both personal and professional, just really the kind of blocking and tackling, breaking it down, and making sure you're doing all the right things to have a good outcome.
That's fantastic. I think that's so critical to have, you break it down into the finite so it's achievable, attainable, and certainly you can hold yourself accountable more frequently. So really good stuff. So let me see. We have another one come in. One of the questions was, Brian, you spent some time talking about reclaiming your voice. Can you give the audience, some of the advisors, some of the words you use, maybe a sample script you use with clients to help you take control of conversations and really change them, some of the search situations, I guess, change them from a self-doubting conversation to a more of a resolute or take action conversation?
Look, I think as I said earlier, I think one of the most important things that I've learned, and I think that we all can learn, is, asking a question and then listening for the answer in an attentive manner really does change the conversation, because most people aren't good listeners. It's just human nature, unfortunately. But one of the things that, I think clients always have preconceived ideas and notions about the markets, about retirement or children's education, whatever they're saving for. And it's really important to ask those questions and find out why they think the way that they do about a certain product or a certain process, and kind of get the weeds out of the way and really have an engaging conversation on how we can help them get to their desired outcome. Our business is about what happens at the end. Did we in fact help our clients achieve all the goals and aspirations that they had in mind? And our job, whether it's market turmoil or bad media press of a certain product, we have to be able to overcome that and get it into the client's level of understanding, because they don't do this day to day. So there's no use using a bunch of jargon they don't understand, and showing them how a certain product or a certain portfolio positioned a certain way is going to help them get to their outcome, their end goal, what they want to have happen. And I think it's vitally important that we ask those questions, because people don't know their risk tolerance until the market goes a little haywire. And quite frankly, the market is always volatile. So if we could show our clients that, just over a year or 2 years or 5 years, what the market's actually do and how volatile they really are, they're going to be more receptive to those downturns, because we're going to educate them on, why the markets react the way they do in certain situations. And once they understand that intellectually, it takes some of the emotion out of it, where they might call you and say, "Oh, I'm scared, let's get out of the market." If you can always bring them back to why we're doing what we're doing and how it's important to their outcome or their goal, they're going to be less reactive in times of stress. And that's really our job, is to be there to make sure that our clients, we're there to hold their hand and talk them off the ledge, use whatever cliche you want. But our job is to be there in lockstep with them and help them understand how their outcomes are going to be achieved.
That's great. So, if I'm listening to you there, the process is kind of, have really thought-provoking questions that focus in on the client's agenda first, right? We want to make sure the questions are focused on the client's agenda. From there, you want to listen with the intent to learn and understand, not just to gather information to wait for your turn to talk, right? So it's great questions focused on the client's agenda, getting down to the why, listening with the intent to learn and understand, which then leads to you being able to make a decisive and resolute recommendation or action for them to take. So really, really good stuff. We probably have time for one more here. So let me take a look. I know we have a handful. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to be able to get to all these questions. But the last one for you, Brian, if you could, is as we all know, relationships are a critical component to running a successful financial planning practice. Can you, again, summarize those three major components necessary to ensure that you're, quote unquote, recharging client relationships. This idea of the foxhole friend, the first punch, and maybe some of the questions you use.
So, you know, I guess as it relates to our business, your foxhole friends are the immediate people you have around you. You know, you have to make sure that your staff is properly aligned with your philosophy and processes to have the client's outcomes achieved. So, you know, you have to surround yourself with hopefully smarter people than you are, people that have different talents than you do. You know, I remember Lou Holtz, I had a talk with him one time, and I said to him, or he said that we were just talking about business stuff, and he said, you know, you never really like people working on their weaknesses because what are you going to get stronger at what you're bad at? But,
Right.
You know, it's kind of funny though, and it was a funny line, but at the end of the day, it's true. There's no sense us spending our energy or time doing things we don't either like to do or don't do well, because it's not going to help our clients. So our job is to find people that can fill in those gaps and make sure that they are doing the job that you want them to do in your philosophy, again, to maintain the client relationship and have a positive outcome at the end of the day. So, you know, foxhole friends in a professional is really your staff and the people you have around you. And I think you know, adding on to that, throwing the first punch is you know, why hide anything? You know, if you're sitting in your conference room with your clients and you happen to have a year where the markets didn't do so well, or the return or something you recommended didn't turn out so well in a portfolio, just be honest and upfront about it and say, hey, look, I know this didn't do this well. This is why. You have to have the background. You know, you have to have the why of, you know, the philosophy of why you put something in a portfolio or why you did something for a client. And if it didn't work out, there's going to be reasons, and just be as transparent as possible and get that elephant out of the room quickly. Because even if they tell you they don't look at their statements, I can tell you they look at their statements. So, you know, bring out the bad news first, get it out on the table and get it out of the way. And I think you end up with a better relationship with your client, and your client ends up with a better outcome. And then, you know, the third piece of that is, you know, reaching out. And, you know, as I said earlier, I think, you know, the most important thing we can do is to reach out to the people around us. And from a personal level, that's your loved ones, and just ask them how they're doing, and your clients, and just finding out how they are, and ask about their loved ones. And that goes a long way to, in my view, building that relationship and building your empathy for your client, because you don't know what they're going through at a particular moment. You know, and it's important to have that dialogue with them on a not annual review meeting platform. You know, just randomly call your top 25 or 30 clients throughout the year and just ask them how they're doing. I think that's helped me tremendously in my career. And I will tell you, most of my clients have become friends because of it.
Outstanding, Brian. I mean, just again, simple approaches that lead to great outcomes. And everyone, on behalf of Lincoln Financial, we want to thank you for taking some time to start your 2021 off on the right foot. Brian, just an unbelievable message. We hope that everyone who was able to join the call found this to be an opportunity to help you all reach new heights in your performance in 2021. I can tell you that change is inevitable. It is going to continue to come upon us wherever we look and whatever life we choose to live. It's how we choose to embrace and react to that change that will drive our outcome. So our ask at Lincoln Financial is that you allow us to help partner with you to drive and own your outcome in 2021. You'll be hearing from some of our wholesalers after this call. The ask is to sit down, to have a conversation to see where and how we may be able to help you and your clients own your outcome in 2021. Thank you.